Fresh and
All right, welcome back to another episode of Fresh and Buds. I am your host, Tommy Fresh, and you, as always, are all of my buds. And today we are joined by an awesome bud today, Miss Rachel Stoddard. How are you doing, Rachel? What's going on?
I'm doing pretty good today. We're 2 weeks out from Baltimore, so I've finally gotten some sleep back, I think. Maybe not enough, but we'll get there before Nats, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, hopefully, right? It would be helpful, hey, LSS, if you're listening, we know you are. Tell us where US Nats is. Actually, by the time this episode comes out, we probably will know. I do have to shout out to, the sponsor of the show, which is the Patreon, the dear listeners that choose to join the Patreon, help keep the mics hot, the lights on, and every little bit helps. And, you get some really cool bonuses on there, some cool extra content and some rewards as well. And it's great, obviously not required. And I appreciate everyone who has joined and you all are wonderful. But also, who else is wonderful? Everybody in the Buds Discord, which is one of the best Discords in the game. That's where you're going to find, an opportunity to hang out with a lot of great people and talk about Flesh and Blood and other things, but you also get to submit listener questions for this show, which we have some at the end of the show. And it's a great place to be. All of this is in the show notes in the link tree. And then if you're watching on YouTube, give us a like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. And if you're listening on Spotify or wherever, give us a little rating on there. It helps out, makes us a little bit more visible. And check out the YouTube as well, because I'm trying to do some more YouTube content over there to kind of supplement the podcast, as well as do the live podcast that I do with Gary, aka Mr. Viz, on Wednesday evenings, the Bud Rush Bellow, 9:30 Eastern. It's a blast. It's a little bit more silly than this one, although we do get silly on this one still, but that one is definitely a wild ride. And then I also have to shout out Greg, our wonderful producer.
Hey, Tommy, and welcome to the podcast. Rachel, really glad you're able to join us this week. Excited to hear about all of the crazy amount of work I'm sure that went into that awesome Nitro Mechanoid cosplay that you did. While I've got you here, though, Tommy, I've been working on something. I got this idea for a new intro for the podcast, and I've been working on it, and I think I'm really happy with where it's landed. So give me your thoughts.
Wow, that was wonderful, Greg. That was awesome. Just keep doing that. Finally, at the end of the show, we have a nice segment from Derek Oswalt, aka Charmer, and I'm looking forward to that. So stay tuned. Now, let's get to the main show. Rachel, how are you doing? You mentioned, we're finally catching up on sleep from removed from Baltimore. And man, did you have a blast in Baltimore?
Oh my God. Yes, but just like every event, I come back needing a vacation from it because I think I wear myself out trying to do it all every single time. Every single time I go to one of these.
Oh, yeah. I mean, especially yourself. And we're going to get to the amazing cosplay that you did. But, on top of playing the game, seeing people, talking to people, you are also just in full cosplay mode. And it's incredible. And I mean, everybody just loved it. But before we get to that, I do want to get a chance to, learn about you, the woman behind the mech suit, and give the buds an opportunity to learn a bit about you. So, first of all, I know that Flesh and Blood might be one of your first trading card games from other interviews I've listened to. Now, what is your experience with gaming prior to Flesh and Blood?
Yeah. So prior to Flesh and Blood, I think in my younger years, my formative years, it was mostly e-gaming, console gaming, things like that. But as I moved into college, I started getting into tabletop gaming a lot. My then boyfriend, now husband, was the one to get me into really dragging me at first to all these LGS to do different tabletop games. One of which we did together a lot was HeroClix. And, it was only dragging initially because I fell right into it, loved the community, loved having my regular, Thursday night place to go. And so that's been my experience since then. But this is, to your point, my first TCG. He tried to get me into Magic earlier in the relationship. And I was like, no way, way too high of a learning curve. I don't get this. Like, take it away. But, this obviously was a different game. And it's become probably one of my greatest fixations in life. I love Flesh and Blood.
Yeah, I mean, I talk to more and more people that have never played a trading card game than I ever expected to with this game, which is really cool. I think it speaks volumes for Flesh and Blood. Now, HeroClix, I never played, but I was obsessed with looking at the minis. In my days hanging out the LGS like 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I don't know how the game works, and I would like for you to enlighten me, just broad strokes, because it always just looked very cool to me.
It is very cool. And I loved the collector side of that. I'll just say that just from the minis experience, I was a bit of a pack rat. Like I always had the itch to get a box every time we'd go into any store. And he always had to try and stop me. He's like, you have too many. But really the way the game works is you're assembling a sort of like a team within the board of different heroes, different Marvel heroes. In this case was the ones I usually pick, but there's obviously all sorts of properties. And when they say clicks, they have a little dial on the bottom of each figure. So you're basically fighting against each other like a war game almost. And with each click, there comes up different abilities or powers on the dial that your hero has that are color coded. And then, of course, you're clicking down, in life as you're taking hits and such. So HeroClix, and that's where it comes from. But I loved that game. We played it for a very long time. And at some point, unfortunately, life took over a bit, as it does sometimes.
Yeah.
In your hobbies. And we kind of fell out of it. But then Flesh and Blood came around. And so now I have a new obsession, hopefully a very long-term one.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, you're off to a roaring start with Flesh and Blood. That's for sure. Now, what was it like coming into Flesh and Blood? How did Flesh and Blood kind of come into you and your husband's lives? Was he playing first, or did you guys both experience it together? What was that all like?
This is the first time I think in a while we've gotten to experience together a new game, because when we first started, when I was mentioning HeroClix, he had played it a little bit, fallen out, and we found this box of them under his bed when I was helping him clean out his place. And that's how we fell into it together. And this happened again. So it was kind of a nice anniversary coming around, 10 years later after being married, that we fell into this together, because he brought home a box of it from his friend's house. They said, hey, there's a new game. Let's get into this. And he didn't introduce me to it. It was just kind of sitting on the kitchen table. And I said, what's this? It looks pretty cool. Looks pretty interesting. He's like, it's a game. It's like Magic. And I'm kind of expecting me to, just be like, oh, cool, and keep walking. I don't know what exactly did it. Maybe it was the art on the box. I don't know. But I said, like, can I see this? I want to look at it. And he actually sat me down and kind of taught me how to build a deck and the game. And now I would venture to say, and he'd probably say this too, that I'm more into it than he is, even though we both go to most things together.
Well, I don't know if he's done any cosplay,
No.
but
He won't let me put him in costume. I want to.
Well, hey, listen, folks at home, if you're listening, let's all gathered around to bully Rachel's husband. No, I'm kidding. We're not bullying ever.
For sure, let's.
Buds don't bully ever, unless it's for the greater
Gentle
good.
persuasion works, though.
But that's really cool. That's something that I've always loved. Lady Fresh, my wonderful girlfriend, who actually, I think right now, if when this episode comes out, I proposed to her last night. Which is very exciting.
Awesome.
She might have said no. But we've done a couple games together, a lot of board games, right? We love board games together. Now I taught her how to play Flesh and Blood. She really liked Dorinthia, but has not taken the full dive yet. We're still persuading gently a little bit every day. But I think that's a really cool thing that a couple can experience together. Now, how has that been in terms of do you find it's strengthened your relationship?
Yeah, actually, I really think it has. We got to spend a lot of time together over the pandemic, and I used to travel a lot for work. And, I think spending that time together and then having also a focus and a game and something we were both passionate about to spend time together really did actually strengthen our relationship. We feel very close now, going to these different events together, sharing our love of the game, and just also in general, you were talking about, general board gaming. We love that as well. And it's kind of rekindled that. I haven't done that in a while. And last year, we went to Gen Con together, and it was my first time there. And so I would say that I probably wouldn't have gone into that experience without having, found Flesh and Blood and gotten into gaming again.
That's really cool. I love to hear that kind of stuff. Now, you've mentioned that, this has become quite the fixation and hobby and all that. Now, do you have any other hobbies, if you have any time for it?
Yeah. I think I tend to collect hobbies, but I would say my favorite right now, besides Flesh and Blood, is actually gardening. So I'm big into gardening. I have a big vegetable plot. It's something, people around here know about me before Flesh and Blood, but most people out in the Flesh and Blood world don't know that usually on the weekends, if I'm not at the gaming table, if I'm not at my LGS, I'm probably in my garden getting really dirty.
Well, that's pretty awesome. Now, what kind of vegetables are you growing right now?
So just getting started for the season, but your typical tomatoes, peppers, I got lettuce, a little of everything. I try to, pumpkins, because I love Halloween.
Oh yeah.
And I always grow my own pumpkins. I've got to have like the most pumpkin collection in the entire neighborhood. You just roll past my house. It's like Rachel's pumpkin patch right there.
I mean, who doesn't love Halloween? I'm sure there's some people, but we do here right now.
We don't need that negativity in our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, back to Flesh and Blood though. Clearly, and this might be a wild statement, but Dash clearly has a huge influence on you.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about where that started?
Initially I would say it was kind of a superficial fixation. I loved her look. I love the steampunk look. Love me a redheaded character. So, I was really, really digging that. But I did like her playstyle initially. That came right off the bat. Like, I love the gunslinger playstyle. I love building a board state, having really different ways to play her. And that's what kind of started the fixation was, not only do I like her design, her backstory, she's peppy, she's fun, she's smart. But I love her playstyle and how many different ways I can play a dash deck and how many different dash decks I could make or use. So that's really where the initial fixation came from, I'd say.
Now, steampunk. So I got to say, and I've said it on the show before, I think Dash is probably aesthetically the one that it's taken me the longest to kind of get used to, right? Because I'm not used to like steampunk. I've never really, got into much steampunk kind of media or anything like that. Is that something you were interested in prior to Feb?
Not deeply, I would say. It's something that I always liked from an aesthetic point of view. And I do, read some novels and series that are kind of set in that, Victorian era that never was. But it wasn't something that I would say, really immersed in or obsessed with. And I like her because her design stands out in a world of fantasy or high fantasy and what we think of that. To see this futuristic type character running around and to get this concept of metrics and like, hey, there's this city of tomorrow in the middle of all this. They're all out here battling with axes and she just comes rolling in with, pistols. I thought that was really neat.
Yeah, it is pretty, wild. I think that's the wildest thing to me because I'm a brute player mostly, right? And like, we're just like, unga, we have a big club and that's all we care about. But, and then next door, basically, there is this beautiful city, which is really cool. Now, what is it about? And I guess this is more me trying to understand and maybe grasp it. What is it about Dash and like metrics or even like Data Doll and all that stuff that yourself and many others enjoy? Like what kind of draws folks to that?
I can only speak for myself, but for me, what draws me to metrics is similar to what I was just saying, that concept that they kind of exist in this vacuum. What are they doing in this city? What cuts them off, or are they cut off from the rest of the world? I feel like there's a lot of deep lore to get into in metrics as to how do they even interact with the outside world? Have they closed themselves off? Are they jerks? Do they not share their technology? Is that why Reinar is so angry because, he can't automate his club? And maybe that's the case, but I think that there's a lot of layers to metrics, especially with it sitting with the pits and that kind of socioeconomic class potential there. I think there's just so much to explore in that storyline between tech and society that can be seen within Metrics.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I think we're all itching for like the lore for Metrics. And I think I also believe like it was kind of brilliant of LSS to kind of give us the pits first, right? Like it's like, hey, here's the pits. And like you said, there's like socioeconomic things going on. And the pits is like, why is it like that when we have the Metrics like right above it or just off to the side to it? And that's it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool juxtaposition. I think that makes a lot of sense. Like there is a lot of mystery there, and that's very cool. Now, in terms of mech heroes, so like you enjoyed Dash, do you think like another mech hero kind of coming out would be your jam as well, excluding Data
I'm
Doll?
clamoring for it. Like I am. Anytime I get a platform to say like, please, James, new mech hero, please. I love Dash. Don't get me wrong. She's my OG. She's my girl. But I would be over the moon to get a little brother or sister for Dash, and to have another mech hero to explore, because I think there's a lot of flavors of mech that we could get into, and the fact that we've heard, insinuations before that maybe mech is a talent and not a class, things like that. Where does that go, and what does that say about our heroes? What are they self-taught? What do they do? And so that's interesting to me. Yeah,
it's very cool. I mean, I will say, I think I made a tweet about it like a while ago, but like the new Transformers movie's coming out, right? And then they showed a picture of like a big gorilla Transformer.
Yeah, like the Beast Wars.
yeah, the Beast Wars. Yeah. And I was like, that to me is just a mech brute, and that's all I really want now. I was like, that seems so cool. Like just giving mech to a bunch of other classes would be really neat. I
thought that's what we were going to get with Riptide. When I initially saw him, I was making the bets online. I straight up said it. I said, oh yeah, mech brute. And that that was not what he was, but that's where I thought they were going,
Yeah, well, he's one that could probably come back as, he loses another chunk of something, and they just like, all right, he's full on mech now.
Exactly.
But yeah, that arm definitely alluded to it.
Yeah.
Now this brings us to a part of the show I like to call the fresh faves. I have a feeling I know what some of these answers are going to be, but I'm going to ask you a couple of your favorites from the game. And if you're game, I'm game. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
First, we have, who is your favorite hero?
I know this is really going to shock you and everybody out there, but it is Dash.
Whoa.
It really is. Whoa, blown out of the water. I mean, I can tell you my second favorite hero.
Yeah, let's hear your second favorite. I think that would be fair.
My second favorite is Dory. Dory's my second favorite hero.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Just, just classic Joan of Arc kind of thing going on. Just love it.
Just boss lady coming out here like, nah, you know what? I'm not going to follow this life path. I'm getting a sword.
Yeah, and it's going to hit twice. So
exactly,
which is very cool. Now, what's your favorite weapon? Because you do have a couple of options there for Dash anyway.
The pistol's the old standby. I've got one on my shelf back here, but actually my favorite weapon is probably the Hanabi blaster. It's so much fun when you can pull it off. I think it's just, and I'm not talking competitively here. The competitively pistol is just what's in the pack, but Hanabi blaster I think is a really fun mechanic. I have a lot of fun with it, and I enjoy doing, like a jumpstart type deck with it.
Oh yeah. And I think, to be honest, like I love the the design on Hanabi Blaster. The idea of doing something that puts a counter on it, and then you get to use the counters to do it. I hope they do that with other things. Like, I'm gonna, here I am gonna harp on Brute again, but like, oh well, if they discard a 6, just put a counter on this, whatever. But yeah, I think that's cool. What's your favorite equipment?
Teklo Foundry Heart. Definitely Teklo Foundry Heart. Not only because it was my first cold foil, that was an anniversary gift from my husband. But that's a great anniversary gift, right? Like, she doesn't want diamonds, she wants cold foils. And so he iced out my entire deck as like a 10-year anniversary thing. But yeah, the Foundry Heart, not just because it's pretty and I have it in cold foil, because it's just, resource generation is so huge. And I think it's just such a powerful equipment, but not busted necessarily. And I think it's just a fun mechanic too. The idea that you're giving something up, you're boosting stuff out of your deck. Goodbye, but you're going to get something for it.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And actually, I believe that was my first legendary, which is pretty cool that I ever opened.
That was how I got Dash. That was the first legendary that was opened out of the case that the guys got. And that's how I fell into Dash. They were like, so we have this Foundry Heart and nobody wants it. This is way back when Monarch was first out. They're like, I don't know. I don't want to play Mechanologist. Give it to your wife.
Well, I mean, the card's awesome. So, I think you, well, now you have a cold foil anyway, so it doesn't even matter. But now, what's your favorite of the other card types? So your non-attack action, your instant, things you throw in your deck.
Yeah. The oldie but goodie, and I still think it's like top for me, has to be High Octane. That card is just another fun card. I know I'm throwing mech cards out here. Big surprise, everybody. But, I'm going to stick to what I love. And High Octane to me is just one of the most interesting and fun cards in the ways that you can combine it with even non-mechanologist cards to just go off. In fact, I was playing with a friend at Armory. I had lost a round to him, and I lost so fast that we decided to do another round. This is actually Sam Dando, my bud. And he and I were playing, and I think I went 30-something at him with a High Octane turn on this game that didn't count. But it's just like the most fun way you can stack damage and have a good time, to where he was like, I'm not even mad. This is fun. This is great.
Oh, yeah. I mean, High Octane, whenever it's played against me, I'm just like, like, it's just, there's like a groan inside of me. I'm like, all right, because I get mad. Rachel now I know I have to do math, and that makes me like, oh God.
We're not Kano players over here. We're brute smash and we're mechanologist shoot, right?
Yeah. Like, man, like they're going to get a bunch of action points. They're
not playing Sudoku.
Yeah. But no, all great answers. And, honestly, right on brand, which I love. One card that you didn't mention, but we're going to talk about right now is Nitro Mechanoid. So,
yes.
First of all, I got to say you absolutely killed it with the cosplay in Baltimore.
Thank you.
It was a well-deserved win, obviously. And, it was almost surreal, if I can just say from my point of view, because I just got to saw it. I didn't get to talk to you while you were there in cosplay, but I just saw it, right? And part of me was just, okay, that's Rachel. And it didn't even seem that out of place, which was, I think, the craziest thing. I was like, oh yeah, obviously, she's going to just come in here with a big mech suit.
And in a mech.
So that was super cool. And, I know everybody loved it. So, I got to know, did you know as soon as you saw the card that you wanted to take a stab at it? And also I wanted to say that, Armor in the Bud Discord asked the same question, but I had already written it down, but I wanted to give him a shout out.
Sure. Yeah. Yes, I knew as soon as I saw it. In fact, I will just preface this. In the months leading up to Dynasty, before even the previews, I had been harping in our locals about my theory crafting that there should be a mech unit or a mech suit where you take all of your equipment and put it underneath it. Literally, I'd been saying that for 6 to 8 months. Insane. And so the day it dropped, my friends were already in the Discord like, has she seen it yet? And I opened up my phone and I screamed. I dropped my phone. I was so excited. I was so happy I saw that. I'm like, oh my God, it's literally everything I ever wanted. And so I knew that day I wanted to do it. And I knew in my mind, like, you are not ready for this level of cosplay, but damned if I'm not going to do it or give it a try. And so, yeah, it was pretty much an immediate commitment, and everybody in our friend group kind of groaned because they're like, here she goes again. She's going to go for this crazy stuff again.
Well, I guess the real question is LSS bugging your locals and taking your ideas?
I'm starting to wonder because so many parts of that card were what I said. So I said to the guys, I'm like, which one of you was talking to James on the side?
Yeah, I know. I mean, the card was pretty mind-blowing for everybody, right?
Yeah.
But obviously the dash stands, the mech stands were super stoked. Now, before you even started to make this cosplay, had you built a deck around it? Were you playing around with the card much, or was it just an aesthetic thing?
It's a little bit of everything. I have played around with it. I have had some trouble getting the mech out, um, and not getting killed beforehand. I think it's a fun deck. It's not necessarily one, and maybe someday somebody will, prove me wrong and bring it and take it all the way to the top of a calling or something. But I think it's more of a fun deck, for a weekly event or hanging with my friends. It's not something to be bringing to RTN this week. But, from a visual perspective, yes, and yes. That was, I was just like blown away. I thought the art was incredible. And so, of course, it's sold out immediately. And so I had my friends putting feelers up, but by mid-weekend, nobody could find it. And I had a person walk up to me, his name is Charlie, and he was coming in from, trying to remember if it was, I think Taiwan, maybe. I hope I didn't get that wrong. But he was out there and he came to me and said, I heard you want a mat and I'm going to sell you mine for cost. And I was blown away. Somebody would be so kind and generous to sell me the mech mat for cost, because that art is just straight fire. So it's like my favorite mat now.
Oh yeah, it's pretty incredible. Now, I know you say that, it definitely for fun, right? It's certainly, because you have to make certain deck, I guess, sacrifices to even
building choices.
Yeah. Funny enough, I played someone in the Battle Hard in New Jersey, which was like a couple months ago, a little, something like that. And he forgot to side out the mechanoid, and he started to make the mechanoid, and he realized that he had Crown of Providence and just not the right pieces of equipment. And he's we were already in like the X2 bracket. So he was just like, you know what, I'm conceding to you. So I was like, all right, man, I'm sorry. You can take it back or whatever. But it was it's tough, right? That card's very tough. And I think a lot of the Dynasty stuff was in that way. Like even Hanabi Blasted, which you mentioned earlier, it is not necessarily the higher echelon of like kind of competitive play. But, I think about Rock, obviously, and it's just like, oh yeah, it's gonna be really hard to play, but it's super cool, and we're gonna toy with your emotions like that.
It feels incredible when you pull it off, when you actually make it work. You're like, yes, it's so fulfilling. Just like a 30 something damage Octane turn into fillings.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Dynasty was very much the set for Timmy's, I think is the best way to put it. Shout out to the tall Timmy, of course, who's just the best.
Maybe I'm a Tammy. Is that what they call the woman?
I guess so. I gotta say I'm not as well versed, but we'll go with it. Now, do you have an estimate, or do you have the exact amount of time it took for you to make that cosplay?
So I started the planning for the cosplay in November, and something I'll, talk about at some point down the road. I mentioned earlier, maybe putting a video together kind of on the making of the mech at some point. For me, I start with planning pretty much immediately. So 6 months ago, I started working through what I'll call my Procreate program, they're different, and they're each different, and I want to put effects in it. As far as time actually making it physically, I started that in January. So I can't give you an exact amount of hours, but I would say from January until the time I left, and even somewhat in the hotel room, I was working pretty nonstop on that costume.
That's pretty incredible. Gosh, I mean, I can't even imagine, right? So I did my first stab at cosplay at Baltimore, and it was very low effort. Sorry.
Drip, right?
Drip Tide, yes, Drip Tide.
Yeah, I loved it.
Very low effort. I didn't really make much, except for like maybe a string. Everything else was ordered on Amazon. That's why I did not enter the competition, because, well, I didn't really do much compared to some people like yourself who did a ton. I can't even imagine, what that really took. So I want you, if you're willing, to kind of go through, how the process went. You don't have to go crazy in depth, but like, that is quite the undertaking.
Yeah. Yeah. So as I mentioned, everything I tend to do with cosplay and costuming starts with way too much planning. It's kind of the joke amongst my friends of, she'll spend 3 months planning something and then try to rush it in 1 month, finishing it, actually making it. But typically my creative process would start with trying to piece apart the card. And so by that, I mean, I tend to upload it into a drawing software. and hard for different pieces so that I can pull them up in layers and say, okay, this is what the arm looks like. This is what the saw looks like. And it helps me really visualize since I'm a visual learner. From there, it really took a lot of research to start this costume because I only started, doing this, I'll call it higher level cosplay about a year ago. And so I'm new to foam work. I'm new to electronics. All of this was, a lot of what went into that mech was new learnings for me. So educating myself on how to do Arduino programming and how to set up lighting, steam machines, which I started with Dash, but these were even on a bigger scale. Adding things like motors into this. I'd never done anything like this before. And so it was a lot of research over December and January to learn all these different skill sets. And then from there on out, it was a matter of actually patterning, pulling out like butcher paper and patterning different large pieces, because you can't just go out there and say, oh yeah, somebody give me a pattern for a mech unit, specifically Dash's mech. You can't just like go pick that off the shelf. And so going from there and patterning and then cutting out probably about, I would say I'd probably used about 10 rolls of foam overall, which, rolls are pretty big. They're a couple feet long, a couple feet wide. And then soldering in all the lighting, that was a lot. There were 5 different lighting rigs with each one had a different animation actually. So some of them look similar, but they had different movement animations to mimic what I wanted them to be. Or there was a boiler with flickering flames or a fan, moving flames. So it was a lot of work that went into that, and then finally a ton of prepping and painting. For those out there, if any cosplayers are listening, I went through 8 cans of Plastidip, which is a lot. You'll typically go through 2. It's if anybody knows what Plastidip is, if you're not a cosplayer, it's a rubberized coating for cars, wheels, dipping different things. And we use it for sealing our foam before painting. So a lot of product went into this and a lot of time.
Yeah, and I have to imagine a lot of money as well too, right? I think that's one of the things that folks just like. I mean, we all really enjoy the end product, whether you are the cosplayer or you're just, us Joe Schmoes, you're just like enjoying, it looks awesome and this is really cool and we want to, see all these different characters come to life. But the wallet aspect has to be pretty intense. I can't even begin to imagine.
Yeah, I don't have an exact figure down, and I don't want to throw figures around all over the place because I don't want to scare people off from cosplay if they hear what I think into this. But I will preface this by saying, when I say that I'm relatively new to, let's say, higher level cosplay, my whole life I love making my own Halloween costumes. I love making my own Ren Fair costumes, and that involved going to, the thrift store and buying something and altering it. I didn't have a lot of money throughout my younger years when I liked to costume. And now that I do have the availability of funds to do it, it has made things, a bit more accessible. I will say that. But, there is a lot on that costume and Dash that are just recycled pieces too. Like there's an actual paper towel roll tube in that hand holding all the electronics together. And just any garbage I can find around the house. So, I don't want to say exactly how much it costs. It might be in the $1,000 range of materials, but that's not necessarily unusual for a large costume like that. If you talk to anybody in the Warhammer community that does those giant type costumes, it's pretty on par.
Yeah, well, I mean, and let's be honest, if you were trying to get in character, right, as Dash, you were doing it by building a mech suit already. So which is pretty cool. And I have to say, the kind of ingenuity that it kind of takes, and I know you mentioned just before you don't want to scare off any cosplayers, and for any potential cosplayers that are listening, please take a look on Rachel's Twitter, which she'll plug in a bit, and just take a look. That is the next level, right? You'll get there. Everybody will get there eventually. Someone will make a mech. I don't know if that's true. But that is the upper echelons of things. Obviously you can do really cool stuff. Now, I think that's awesome that you kind of found out how to make all those different pieces work for the mech suit. Now, do you have any professional background in any of that? Or is this coming just from straight, creativity and kind of like a MacGyver-esque drive?
Yeah, it is coming from a MacGyver-esque personality, I would say. My whole life, one of the things I've liked to do is just learn to do different crafts and things with my hands. I come from a family of carpenters. My dad, would take me to work on things around the house all the time. In fact, we redid our house together. And so for me, that's where a lot of this is coming from, is I don't know something, but I know I can research it. And I know I can learn it if I watch it enough times or if I try it enough times and, mess up. So there is a really big learning curve for some of this, but I find it really, really satisfying. When I, crack that code. The first time I was able to make my, newly soldered lighting come together and see the flames, on the pattern. And that was just the coolest feeling, because I'm like, I ran downstairs like a child with my art for the fridge. And I was like, honey, look at this. It's a tiny light strip with 6 lights with a flickering orange thing on it. He's like, what is that? I'm like, it's a flame, but check out what it's going to be, And so that's where I come from. That's
pretty cool. Now, I do have to ask, what is the most satisfying part of doing such an elaborate cosplay? Is it the figuring out those things along the way, right? You had to figure out a lot of different things, like you just said, or is it the actual, showing it off, being able to have everybody see the final product, or is it everything that's along the way?
It's a little bit of everything. So for me, I do like a challenge. I always tell people, if you want me to do something, say I can't do it. That's the fastest way to get me to do something. Like literally one of my friends joked, oh, are you going to make the pistol smoke now? When I took Dash to Worlds, and I was like, well, you know what, actually, and that was like a week before we went. And I figured out how to make the pistol smoke or steam. So for me, that's a huge part of it. I love that personal fulfillment of learning something new on my own and transforming it, even coming from nowhere and not knowing what I'm doing. But the other part is meeting the community. I always say this is like the best benefit of cosplay. Like tailors are great. I'm not going to say it's not awesome to have one, or to have 2 actually on the shelf. But my favorite part of every event isn't the stage. It isn't the tailor. It is getting to meet so many people, because I guarantee there's no way I'd ever have met so much of this incredible community without standing there like a fool in my, 6-month costume, and getting people to come up to me and say, hey, I want to meet you. I want to talk to you about your costume. That's just super fulfilling for me.
Well, yeah. And I got to say that the community really appreciates you and folks like you, right? Because, we all obviously really love this game, and a lot of that love comes from these characters, and just seeing them come to life is pretty incredible. I know that when I saw you in, I think, Indianapolis, the Calling Indianapolis, I was like, oh, well, I got to go introduce myself. I said, hey, Rachel, Tommy, awesome. And then I kind of left. That's usually my go-to. Like, I don't want to bother people. But it's just like, it shows that you care, right? Nobody's just doing this to do it. I don't think, right? Like that doesn't,
no.
It doesn't help anyone. It doesn't help yourself. And it shows that you have a passion, and it's a shared passion, and you get to express it in a different way than a lot of people, which is very cool. And I do, I just got to commend you. And I think it's a very positive thing for the community. And I think it's going to be a really great thing for the community going forward. And, you are on the ground floor. You're going to be Dash for a very long time, Rachel. I'm sorry to say this, but it's just true. You're going to be Dash for a very long time.
I embrace it. I love it. I think she's a great role model to have. I don't mind it at all.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, this is a question that I had, and also Smithel in the Buzz Discord also had. What was the biggest challenge throughout the whole process of making this mech suit?
I would say the biggest challenge was safety and wearing stilts. So in this costume, the whole costume is difficult. Every piece is different. Every piece had a different mechanic or effect. There was not really a lot of vanilla things going on with this costume. But ultimately, it was, I'm terrified of heights. I don't even like standing on a kitchen chair. And I strapped 1.5 stilts to my feet. And to me, it was important to have that full-on effect. When I told people I was doing the mech, they were like, well, yeah, she's probably making like an outfit that looks like the mech. Maybe she'll wear some high heels with it, and being able to do that, to walk on scene and kind of bring it to reality, I knew I had to have that elevation in the costume. And so learning to walk on stilts, modifying the stilts for safety, because I knew I'd be around a lot of people and I couldn't just trust my balance. That was the hardest part, practicing that, making sure it worked. And then the first time I got up on them fully in costume the day of, and I'm just sitting here looking around, there's all these people staring at me as I'm trying to walk. That really is one thing. You think you're confident until you've got, a couple hundred people watching you walk in this thing. So that was the hardest.
Well, I gotta say, I mean, people can comment if they disagree, but I don't think it showed at all that you were any kind of nervous or even felt like you were in danger, because you definitely just played it off perfectly. So, despite that being the most difficult challenge, I do think you pulled it off quite well. Now, here's a question, and this, I feel like the last question kind of answered it, but was it at all comfy? Because comfort probably comes last in a lot of these things. So
yeah. So the joke, I actually was doing an interview recently, and they were saying, like, how do you make costumes comfortable? And I said, first of all, don't wear a mech suit to Pro 2 or 3 Baltimore. But it actually wasn't as uncomfortable as you'd think. With my costumes, both this and Dash and a couple I'm actually working on, the first and foremost thing for me is either A, can I play in it and be comfortable all day? Or in this case, knowing I wouldn't be able to play in it, do I feel safe and comfortable? So nothing really pinched or rubbed or anything weird. What made it uncomfortable was that it was 30 something pounds. We think about 35 pounds. I'm about 125 pounds myself. So that's a large percentage of my weight. And most of it is on my 2 legs and my right arm with the saw. So being that off balance and picking up your legs with each movement, it gets tiring. I had shin splints like 2 days after that because I was in it for about 2.5 hours or so, maybe 3.
I mean, I don't even know what to say to that. I mean, like 2.5 hours in that. I mean, the saw was pretty incredible, right? Obviously the whole thing was incredible, but the actual saw was pretty nuts. And I wasn't even thinking that until you just said it, like how heavy that could have been, right? Because you had to like lift it up because you were sawing people. I saw you saw James White, which, hey, listen.
Yeah. That's the most nerve-wracking moment of my life, honestly, when he came up to me, he's like, let's do a picture. And he's like, hey, can you put the saw over my head? And so I'm like running it. And by the way, that saw was like broken the day before. I had to fix the handle. So the whole time I'm holding it over his head. I mean, it's foam. It's foam. Yeah. It's safe. Those blades are just pure foam. But still, I'm just like, do not drop a moving foam saw on James White's neck, please. Dear God.
Would you say?
So that was so nervous.
Did you say, when's the next mech hero coming, huh, James? Jimmy?
I really, really tried to use it to my advantage there. Like, this saw could move.
Oh, man. It's so cool. So absolutely cool. Now, you just mentioned that you have some other things you're working on. And if you want to share what they are, that's cool. But if you want to keep it for a surprise, I understand. But is there, outside of those things, is there anything else you're interested in trying? Maybe from other classes?
So, I'm trying to, I wouldn't say I'm going to keep my costumes a secret forever. I like to kind of tease them out. In fact, I wanted to tease the mech, but Flake said, hey, you're coming on ISP. I want you to, keep this a secret, top secret. So that's why the mech didn't have teasers. I will say, as a teaser to my next 2 costumes, one of which is a mechanologist card. And I will be having to invest highly in gold paint. So you guys can take that as you will. And then the other one is a non-mechanologist card. I'm not going to say what class it is because it'll give it away, but I'm sure people can guess. It is a bit futuristic. So that will be another one that I'm working on pretty soon.
Very cool. Now, outside of those ones, is there anything, let's say there's like a dream card that wasn't mechanologist. Yeah. What would it be?
A current card. So this is a bit wild. I actually talked to somebody about this. I was thinking about doing one of the large Guardian armors, like as in the male large Guardian armors.
Oh my God.
Like, I want to use the stilts again. Why not? You know, I mean, who's to say I couldn't pull off Mangle, right?
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking. Mangle or Pulverize. I mean, I think it's the same dude, right? But like, or last.
My husband's favorite card, and he was like, "What if you could pull that off?" Yeah.
Yeah, that would be. Oh God, we have not seen. Have we seen that one yet? No, to my knowledge.
We have not.
Well, maybe we'll edit this out, and maybe you can do it. Or someone please do it. I think it would be cool regardless. I mean, any of those giant Guardian things are pretty crazy. And you have, like you said, you have the stilts, and you conquered the fear of the stilts. So, just like, let's keep the ball rolling, right?
I think I could pull it off. And I think it's hilarious. Pull off that big helmet, and then there's my tiny head.
Yeah. I mean, you'll have to get a picture of James White with you trying to stab him with the horns,
The horns.
Now, thank you for actually shedding light onto the whole process of the mech. It's really, it really is impressive, and and then I do want to shout out all the other cosplayers that were there that day. Everybody did such a great job, and it's such a blessing that we get to have like a focus on cosplay at these events, right? I don't think I ever really experienced that, like outside of maybe like conventions and stuff like that. But is there anything that you'd like to see like down the road in terms of LSS kind of promoting cosplay like that?
I think they've honestly been doing it. I've seen it raise in stature every time I've come to an event. The first time I cosplayed was at Nats with my Dash 1.0, we'll call it, before I had finished it. And I went to Worlds in it. And as you mentioned, I was at Indy and then here. And I think with each successive event, they've elevated it literally this time onto a stage, and made it a bigger presence as opposed to just, the cosplayers show up, let's kick them some cool prizes. They're definitely embracing it as an overall larger part of the community. I'm excited to see that. One thing I'd love to see more is some more participation kind of tokens, for individuals that do come to the contest, because there's only so many tailors, unfortunately. There's only so many prizing, but there's so many incredible costumes, and there's more every time. And so, I know that they've talked about, working on things for that. For the cosplayers that do attend, put in the effort and come on stage. And so that would be amazing to see from a support perspective, so they don't necessarily walk away with something, empty handed. It would be great that they get something for all their efforts. And I think that would be wonderful to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And firsthand, and a lot of those cosplayers know firsthand, like how much work it does, you do have to put into it. And also just like beyond all the work that you put into it, and, sure, you have to be like, there's a certain amount of bravery that it takes to kind of just step out into that convention center, right? In full costume, right? Like you're really putting yourself out there. You got to be in, kind of in the zone, and that's huge. Yeah. Do you have any kind of hints for anybody who would be considering doing that, but might be scared to just walk out in cosplay?
So what I would tell them is that, it's valid to feel nervous. You're putting yourself out there, as you were saying, you're doing something new, especially if you've never done it before. And you may feel a little funny at first. I know I did. The first time I cosplayed as Dash was at Nationals, and I actually was playing on day 2. So I had to sit down at the table first thing that morning at the draft table in costume. And I felt very awkward at first. But what I would tell them is that, you are going to be loved. Trust me. People are going to be ecstatic to see you. I don't care what you're cosplaying, whether it's something beginner level, whether it's higher level, difficult, not difficult, what character, what class, doesn't matter. The crowd's going to love it. You are going to make a lot of new friends that day. And honestly, it's one of the best ways, like I said, to meet everybody in this community as quickly as possible and to make a ton of new friends. So put yourself out there. I guarantee people are going to love you for it.
Amen. Amen. I love that. And, it all comes down because we all want to make more buds. That's what this is all about. That's why I started this podcast. Exactly. And look, it's the fast track to making a ton in one day or one weekend, But we have some listener questions, Rachel. Are you game to answer some?
Absolutely. I'm ready.
First, we have a question from Andromeda, who makes great altars and has been a long time bud. In all caps says, "Why are you so cool? You're my idol. I love Dash." And then asks, "What hero do you actually play?" Now I know we actually already answered this question, but I felt the idol part needed to be said. So,
well, thank you, Andromeda. That is a huge compliment. Though I will say, I think you were the one at Pro Tour that got that Dash poster I wanted. So, but that's cool because I'm glad it went to another Dash fan. Very exciting. So. But yeah, I do play Dash. I love her both, in the cosplay realm, the hero realm, the lore realm, and at the table. So thank you so much for the compliment. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Next comes from a small creator named Flake, aka Matt DeMarco, who asks, do you like Dash?
Oh my God. Matt, you're coming to the Chicago area in a couple of weeks, and if you want to go to dinner, you can't stop sending me questions like this. Smart Alec. But yeah, I do actually like Dash. The joke around the LGS is that one day I'm going to sit down at the table and pull out something other than Dash, and everybody's just going to hit the floor because it'll amaze them. So one of these days I'm going to borrow my husband's story deck and just show up with it. But yes, I do actually love Dash. It's not a ruse, Matt, I swear.
Well, you heard it here first, Flake. She loves Dash. Next comes from a great creator, Dead Summer Art, aka Kale. Comes on the podcast before every single set review to do some lore talk. And he asks, where would you like to see Dash's story go next? Do you think she will find out? I can't read the rest of the question. Find out about corruption within the major industry companies, travel to the pits, get involved in the War of the Monarchs, etc.
Yeah, no, I love this question. It kind of goes into what we were talking before with the lore and what's exciting about metrics. So, we know she's been in the pit. She's been hanging out with the Zalian buds and, doing some Robin Hood-esque things. So I think that's exciting. I kind of want her, to be that character, to be that rich girl that kind of, stands up for her friends, of all the different classes of metrics in the pits. And so I can see her story continuing that way from the lore that we've already seen with her getting involved in corruption, with her getting involved in the things that are going on with her friends that don't happen to be in metrics. They happen to be in the pits, in a different area than her and being brought up differently. So I think that's a really exciting place that they could go with that is, fighting corruption, being that Robin Hood type character would be really cool to see.
That'd be really neat. Next question comes from Capolo, who's an excellent Dash creator and dear friend. Though now that I said that, his head is going to get so big he won't be able to fit in the Buds Discord anymore. Rachel, what existing or made up talent would you love to see paired with mechanologists in the near future?
Ooh, so I know we've talked about mech probably being a talent, so I don't know if it can get like a combo with a talent. But I think if it could have a talent, I would love to see I've said this before, like a shadow mechanologist, like a biomancer, something kind of creepy, like whoever was replacing Riptide's parts there, would be like a really cool character to see. Barring that, let's just say that, hey, you can't have like two talents paired like that, then I would say a mech warrior would be high on my list. AKA like the girl in Blade Runner is a favorite card of mine.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I was thinking that too as well. And also, to be honest, I've thought a lot about Shadow Mechanology. I play a lot of Leviah, love Shadow. And every time I listen to Welcome to the Machine by Pink Floyd, I just think, wow, that would be an awesome thing. Shadow Mechanologist. So LSS.
Sick.
Just keep talking, Rachel. If you can do us a favor and talk about it at your LGS, so we all know it's bugged there. And I'm starting to think, either that or one of these days, one of my friends going to turn to me and pull off like the mask, and it's James. Like I was here all along the entire. I should have known. It was the pop collars.
Yeah, exactly. Now I'm going to be watching out for that.
Yeah. Next comes from Sigma, who asks, Rachel, for someone who had never played a TCG before, Flesh and Blood, what do you believe pushes women away from TCGs, and what would you do to attract more of them into TCGs, especially Flesh and Blood?
Yeah, so I would say I don't know that we're being pushed away, or at least not as much as, in the past, kind of when we think about, girl walks into an LGS kind of thing. But what I will say is we're maybe not being invited to the table is what it is. So less, get out of here, and more just not being, asked to play or invited to play. And so I think the biggest thing that can be done is, one, having, like we already have this with Fab, but these great female heroes and characters. I talk to a lot of women out there that they may not play TCGs, but like myself, they love D&D. They love getting into a hero, a character, and crafting it and feeling a part of that. And so I think that focusing on, to use like a cliche, but these strong female heroes is awesome. People like Dory, people like Dash, that go out there and have that element, I think would attract women. But also just, asking your female friends if they want to join, if they want to come to the table, showing them the game. I know it's micro level, but it starts at that level of saying, hey, check out this new game. I think it'd be fun if we play it, or you want to come out sometime. We're doing this armor night. It'll be fun. And I think that would be a great way to get more women involved in this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, yeah, like you said, it's micro at that point, but if everybody's doing it, it's not micro anymore. It's macro. So, that's a great answer. Now, next question comes from, or the last question comes from Moonside Man, aka Adam, who did the awesome Null Rune set at I think it was Nats, cosplay. He asked, Rachel, what would you say has been the best part of Fab TCG cosplay aside from winning the contest?
Yeah, I said it a little before, but it's the community. But two parts to that answer. One, it's getting to meet the community broadly and enjoy and share that love and bring things to life for them. But also it's the cosplay community itself. We hang out on the cosplay Discord a lot. There's so many great people there, from, hey, I've never done a costume before, where do I start, guys, to people that are, multiple time champions of different costume contests. And it is a really tight-knit community for people that have never met each other. Sometimes, everybody wants to help. Everybody wants to be a part of crafting this universe. And that's what I really love about, doing cosplay within Flesh and Blood.
Awesome. Love those answers, Rachel. And also love that you came on, gave us your time and chatted with us. It's really a pleasure, and you've been an awesome bud, and I really appreciate it. Can you please plug anything you'd like to plug? I know you'd mentioned earlier a little bit about maybe some content coming out. I don't know when, but people should look out for it.
For sure. So I mostly hang out on Twitter. You can find me under Max Ferocity on Twitter. I'll post about costuming, general posting, all sorts of memes, whatever I might have on my mind. So join me over there. Two, if you see me at an event, please do come up and say hi, whether or not I'm in costume. Best part of my day is meeting new people and getting to share the love of the community. And to the point that was just made, I am putting together a channel. It's going to be sporadic. It's mostly kind of a vlog for my costumes, what I'm working on, what's coming down the road, or maybe even look backs at certain things. I might even throw in some tutorials there if people want to see it. And the channel name is going to be Pour the Mold.
Oh, I love that. I love that name. Oh, excellent. Well, whenever you're going to link, please send it so I can share it. If you already have the link, I could definitely share it today or whenever people are listening to this. For sure. You all can continue to find me at Fresh Buds Pod on Twitter. Check out the Buds Discord. Check out the Patreon. That's all in the link tree below. Also the YouTube. Now, Rachel, I might need to ask for a link to the Discord for cosplayers, because at 500 subscribers, I'm doing a full adult Leviah cosplay, and I cannot wait to do that. And I am completely out of my depth, and it is going to be something else. So I might need to pop in there for some pointers and tips. But so if anybody's listening and wants to check out the YouTube, it's a good time over there. And whenever I do the cosplay, it's going to be a ton of fun. And my co-host on the Bud Rush Bellow, Gary, will be the dead rabbit that she had to sacrifice to become the adult Levi that we all know and love. Now, this was a blast, Rachel. And as all the listeners know, I like to end every episode talking a little bit about food, because I think food is the great unifier. So please tell me about some food you've been enjoying lately, some local grub for you, or anything you'd like to talk about.
Yeah. So I think right now I've been enjoying getting back home to one of my favorite pizza places. I think it might be a chain. I don't know if it's local or not, but they have this honey spicy pizza that I'm all about lately. And I think all of my friends have gotten into it too. So it's become like my singular focus of when I get home, this is my comfort food. I got back from Baltimore. I think it was like night one. I must have my spicy sweet pizza. And so that's what I've been into lately. It's not the most exotic thing, but man, it hits all the spots. I'm telling you.
Oh yeah. Would they do like the hot honey on top?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Pepperoni?
Yep. Spicy. Gotta have it all. Gotta have like the entire well-rounded sweet spicy. I love it. So that's been what I've been into lately. But my husband and I, we eat just about everything, and we probably go out to eat far too much. Gotta explore all the new places.
Well, yeah. I mean, we have to be cultured, but I don't blame you. But that sounds amazing. And I know exactly the kind of pizza that you're talking about. And I cannot wait to actually have some at some point. Probably not tonight, obviously. It's a little late for me, but That's okay. Rachel, thank you again. Unfortunately, we ran out of time for Charmer today, so maybe next week we'll be able to get to him. But please, everyone, treat each other, with love and respect, and see you next week.